a peek behind the curtains for the listeners. Early on Sunday, I texted you and not group text, and I was like, assuming nothing crazy happens today, what should we lead on, you think? And I don't usually ask these questions because normally I have a pretty good idea of what I'd like to talk about, but it was like, what do you guys think? Should it be Auburn losing again, or Kentucky winning shorthanded, or Texas Tech sweeping Texas? And if I remember correctly, it's been a long day, but if I remember correctly, we settled on Auburn. But then something crazy happened. Wisconsin beat Michigan. Nothing crazy about that. But what happened next was wild, and it led to Michigan coach Juwan Howard hitting Wisconsin assistant Joe Krabbenhoff with an open hand. Deadleg, this is where I'll bring you in. You wrote the column about it. Before we play the clip and discuss what happened, please explain to listeners what happened at the end of the game that led to the incident in the handshake line.
I know we're going to go longer on this than I even want to, but it's arguably this has become the biggest story in sports coming out of the weekend. I mean, we'll see. We're going in real time. We got the All-Star. The All-Star game's happening tonight, right? Like, I've lost all track of everything that's going on. But I mean, I think this maybe has become the biggest story in sports. So I do have a column up that I think literally posted minutes ago. I frankly haven't even read it back since I filed it to the editors, but I did talk to a couple of coaches after all this happened. And what they basically said was, this was a bunch of BS, man. And what they meant by it was like, this game was done. Like, this whole thing gets avoided, period, if both of these coaches can just toss their egos to the side and end things the way that these things normally end most of the time in these games. Wisconsin had pulled away. It won. But Juwan Howard, if you really want to go to what truly started this whole thing, it is Juwan Howard when he opted to press with the game over. Wisconsin had its backups in. There's no reason to press. None. The game's done. What are you doing? Completely pointless. Juwan Howard's decision to do that. That is actually what starts this whole thing, okay? Then Gard says, well, hold on a second. Like, these are my backups, and I don't want to have a turnover. Again, whatever, but Gard's like, okay, you're going to do that. I'm going to do this. So he calls a timeout to reset the 10-second clock to get it over the timeline so there's not a turnover. Again, both these things are idiotic and stupid. Who the F cares? But you want to know why this starts? It's that. Howard wants to press when the game is over. Gard calls the timeout. And in the postgame, we're going to play it, but in the postgame, Howard said the timeout's what set him off because it wasn't necessary. Dude, your argument caves in on itself. You didn't need the press if the game was done either. Completely pointless move. So both coaches are at fault. Their egos got in the way. And then we got to the post-game scuffle, handshake line, all that stuff. Back to you, GP.
So for those watching on YouTube, it was wild because Andrew Catalan is signing off the way you do at the end of a CBS Sports game. And he starts to notice, like, hey, there's something happening here. Juwan Howard's like not in the handshake line the way a coach normally is. And I give everybody at CBS Sports who was making the end of that game happen credit for staying on it and recognizing we have a possible interesting situation here. I don't think anybody anticipated it escalating to where it escalated to, but it's tremendous that they stuck with it the way they stuck with it. So for those people watching on YouTube right now, here is what it looked like. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, this is what it sounded like.
77-63. And Juwan Howard not going over immediately to shake hands. Now he's going to get in the line. Interesting finish here. 77. Oh, see, and they're going at it. Oh, yeah. Howard and Gard are not happy right now as the two of them continue to have words. We told you Juwan Howard was not happy about that timeout. And Juwan Howard just threw a right hand. And now we got a scrum. We have a scrum in Madison. Players are pushing and shoving. This is an ugly scene. This is an ugly scene.
Oh, my God.
Trying to get separated. And there's no doubt it all stems from the timeout by Greg Gard. Now, that's not an excuse for this, but that is what angered Juwan Howard, and it spilled over into this. And you saw Howard and Greg Gard nose to nose.
I knew he was. I wouldn't be happy either, but there's no excuse for this. Absolutely not.
Zero excuse. This cannot happen.
So that's the way it played out on the CBS Sports broadcast. Obviously, after the game, Juwan Howard and Greg Gard both met with the media. First, we'll play a little bit of what Juwan Howard said after the game.
Raising it to a point where it looked like you hit another coach in the face. What kind of happens in between to make that happen?
Well, basically, I addressed with the head coach that I will remember that because of that timeout, and for someone to touch me, and I think that was very uncalled for him to touch me as we were verbalizing and communicating with one another. So that's what ended up happening. That's what escalated.
And then Greg Gard was also asked about it. Here is what he said after the game.
Greg, congratulations on the win. Before we talk about the performance, take us through what happened after the game in your eyes.
Well, apparently he didn't like that I called the timeout to reset the 10-second call because we only had 4 seconds to get the ball over half court. And I didn't want to put my backups. I had all my bench guys in the game. I didn't want to put them in that position of scrambling with only 4 seconds. So I took a timeout, and it got us a new 10 seconds and helped them get organized to get the ball in. And he did not like that when he came through the handshake line. So I'll leave it at that, and the tape will show the rest.
Well, Coach, you got.
So I give both coaches credit. They told the truth post-game. Like, they both accurately described what happened. But there is no getting around the fact that the root of this is Juwan Howard pressing at the end in the final seconds of a blowout. Because, like you, I've had countless coaches, even athletic directors, reach out to me since this happened, via text that I can get on my computer. If you tried to call, I can't answer your phone call right now. We'll get to that later. But text messages have been plentiful. And everybody says, like, listen, either the game's over or it's not. And the coach on the wrong end of a blowout, it's up to him. Either the game's over or it's not. If you want to just let this clock play out, we're happy to let this clock play out. You see it all the time in basketball. Hey, we're done. We're not guarding you anymore. Now you dribble at the clock. Sometimes you'll even see coaches commit a turnover, like let a shot clock, let the shot clock run out and just give the ball back to you rather than take a shot. Now, some other coaches aren't into that anymore because it plays into your computer numbers and they don't like that. But for the most part, once the team on the wrong end of it says, hey, okay, this is over, then it's over. But if you want to keep playing, we're going to play. That seems to be the prevailing message from coaches I've talked to. And so when Juwan Howard says, yeah, we're down big, we're not coming back and winning this game, but we're going to press your backups and make things hard for them. Well, now, if you're the coach on the other side, it is totally within your right to do whatever you got to do to make this situation better. And Greg felt like he needed to call a timeout in that moment. The timeout set Juwan off, but Juwan pressing is what created the situation where Greg calls the timeout. So that leads to, okay, final buzzer handshake line. And it is true, undeniably, like Greg said, the tape will tell the rest of the story. It is true that Greg did put his hands on Juwan Howard. There's no getting around that. From my perspective, what that looked like to me was after Juwan clearly pulled his mask down and said what he said, which is, I'll remember that shit. Greg stopped him to say, ho, ho, ho. Like, let me explain to you why I called that timeout. I didn't interpret that as Greg putting his hands on Juwan Howard as much as let me stop. Hey, stop right here. Let's talk about this. Let me explain this to you. But that said, I can understand why Juwan might have interpreted that way. And then obviously things escalated from there. I do not know what Joe Krabenhoff said take it to another level because he
Mhm.
clearly said something. Like however mad Juwan was at Greg, he didn't take a swing at Greg. He took a swing at Joe. And so Joe had to say something to set that off. At this point, I don't think we know what that was, but I think most people are going to agree with this, unless it was way over the line, racial slur, something like that. There's just no explanation for a college basketball coach taking a swing at another college basketball coach. This is how outlandish it is. My brother, bless his heart, knows nothing about college basketball. He doesn't follow it. He doesn't. I doubt he's ever heard this podcast. He knows nothing about college basketball. He loves NASCAR. He's watching the Daytona 500. Even he texted me and was like, "Yo, what is going on with these basketball coaches?" And he was like, "Is this normal? Is this a normal thing? How often does something like this happen?" And I said, "This never happens because it never happens. It's a wild scene."
Well, it's not that it never happened. We get there's a dust up every so often in the handshake line, but to this level, yeah, obviously this is not common. Inform your brother appropriately. So here we are. I want to know what now I texted Krabbenhoff and I said, checked in. I told him I was writing a column. He deferred any kind of comment. He's like, I'm just going to let Greg Gard and our AD handle this. So I have no comment. Because I told him, I was like, I'm going to write about this and I'm going to say in the column that I want to know what you said. And he's didn't offer that. So I don't know what he said or what he did. He's in the middle. He's maybe talking to Howard. There's a player there as well. I don't know what prompted this. That's still the great unanswered thing as we record this shy of 8 Eastern here on Sunday night. Maybe if you're listening to this podcast at some point on Monday or even Tuesday, perhaps we have an answer to that question by that point. Can't read the future. Don't know what that's going to entail. Gard's not completely off the hook here. I get what you're saying because Howard tries to do the blow by.
Right.
He gives Gard, Howard, he has to say something. So he says it. And then Greg wants to be like, whoa. Okay, hold on here. Greg touches him first. Now Howard immediately points at him and gets right up in Gard too. So it's right like that. But Gard touches him first, and then there's a video I tweeted out. We're not going to play it on the podcast because it's a ton of profanity. You can hear Juwan Howard saying "Don't effing touch me" like 5 times in a row, and you can clearly understand why Juwan Howard doesn't want. It's not that Juwan Howard is afraid of Greg Gard or anything like that. Just get your hands off of him. And Gard's trying to almost calm Howard down. That point has long since passed. Gard was the thing I have an issue with Gard is in his post-game presser, he tried to frame it as though he was calmly trying to explain to Juwan Howard that he was trying to reset the clock. One, he wasn't calmly trying to do anything. Everyone's seen the video. And two, that's also not giving Howard enough credit. There was a timeout. Juwan Howard doesn't know the rule. I think Phil Martelli then at the very least knows the rule. But to assume that Juwan Howard doesn't know the rule, I think doesn't give Howard nearly enough credit. So you have all that. Then Krabbenhoff gets into the picture. What he says, I don't know. Juwan Howard deserves a lengthy suspension. That is undeniable. But a point in my column is this is not all on Juwan Howard. It's just not. He's at the center point of it. What he did, you can't have happen. This is now the second incident in 2 years he's had a confrontation with another coach. Last year was Mark Turgeon in Maryland. It wasn't nearly as bad as this. I don't want to say we have a pattern developing because I don't think that 2 times in 2 years is necessarily a pattern. The next time it happens, I would say it's a pattern. The next time it happens, perhaps Juwan Howard would be fired in that instance. I don't think that Juwan Howard should be fired. I do think he should face a lengthy suspension. If you told me he was sat for the rest of the regular season, I wouldn't have any issue with it. You cannot have this, obviously. And what makes it even worse for Juwan is when he went into the press conference, he didn't have any kind of contrition. He had none. I'm literally getting a text from a head coach in the Big Ten right now saying, I'm listening to your podcast. Thank you, to what we're talking about with this topic altogether. Because obviously, this has lit the conference on fire. Juwan Howard needs to be held responsible for what he did. You cannot be swiping at another. He assaulted Joe Krabbenhoff. Now, I don't know what Joe said. I don't know what he said. That could be a very important component to this. But to talk like Greg Gard is not at least partly responsible, and then Howard ignites. There were players on both sides that had closed fist punches that threw. Okay. Not that I don't know. I doesn't sit well with me that this is suddenly just all on Juwan Howard because he was the one that really struck first. I get it. He deserves a serious punishment, but it's just not all on him. If Greg Gard had let him just go by. Just take the win, man. Just take the win. You're at home. Let him walk by. Let Howard say his piece. You don't need to stop him and say, here's the deal, man. In fact, if you call a timeout, the 10-second rule resets, and I wanted to get across. Like, they were both pissed off. And again, if they just didn't have that nonsense at the end of the game, we wouldn't have had this to begin with there. So, I don't know. It just, the whole thing is ugly. And I could see it playing out in real time that everyone was going to lay this at Juwan Howard's feet. I'm just not there. I can't get there. I'm not saying that Gard needs to face the same exact suspension length as Juwan Howard or anything like that. But to think that this was all on Michigan and only on Michigan and only on Howard, I think is inaccurate. I just do. Howard that's highly problematic. And the fact that he did not apologize at all for that after the game is stunning to me. He knows what he did was wrong. His own boss came out, basically put out a statement refuting what Howard was saying. And I think he's going to face a serious punishment there. But I think let's just be fair to what happened. We can see the entire video. That other video that was sent out, I want to get the reporter's name right here. So let me just say it real quick. I tweeted it out. I want to make sure I get his full name correct because he was right there. It's actually really good journalism. Pablo Iglesias. He is right on these two dudes as this all goes down there. And it's not Gard trying to de-escalate the situation. That's all I'll say. Krabbenhoff makes it even worse. I don't know what he says. Howard's got to be held responsible for his actions. There's no doubt about it. But I don't want to make this purely binary and simplistic because I think it's more than just Howard connecting and throwing an open face mush hand slap, however you want to define it on Krabbenhoff.
I heard from one coach tonight who said, and he explained a similar situation he was in this season, in the sense that his team was on the wrong side of a blowout. It's the final seconds. Like, hey, we're not playing it. Let's let this clock run out. And the other team banged home a 3 on him. And he was like, that was unnecessary. Because you're exactly right. When Juwan says the timeout was necessary, the comeback to that is the pressing was unnecessary. Like, the timeout was unnecessary. Gotcha. But what you were doing that caused the timeout, that was also unnecessary.
And by the way, I've heard a little bit of like Juwan saying he wasn't pressing. Dudes were up 94 feet under the basket guarding them. Okay, if you don't want to define whatever the hell that was as true press, it's all semantics. They were playing him like it was John Chaney. Okay, they were defending him under the basket. So Gard has the right to do it. Shouldn't have gotten to that point.
So this coach said, "Listen, we're on the wrong end of a blowout. It's the final seconds. Like, let's end this." And the other team, they got their subs in and they bang home a 3 at the end. And the coach said, yeah, that was unnecessary. And he said, I was a little pissed about it. But I think the phrasing he used is, I just took my ass whipping and kept it moving, And that is what I think most coaches would tell you you're supposed to do in that spot. Do the blow-by handshake, keep your mouth shut, and take your ass whipping and be done with it. So perhaps that's what Juwan should have done rather than pull his mask down and say, I'm going to remember that, to Greg. And obviously, I think with the benefit of hindsight, at the very least, Greg should have just kept it moving. Hey, we just beat Michigan on CBS. Let Juwan Howard pop off. We're good. Keep it moving. In that moment, though, and you can say he's wrong if you want to. It's fine with me. I'm just saying in that moment, perhaps I can only see this through my own eyes. But if I thought the other guy was out of line first, pressing my backups at the end of a game that's already decided, and that's the only reason I called the timeout that he's mad about, and then he wants to pop off at me, my instincts would be, hey, yo, man, you caused this. Like, you're mad at me? I didn't want to call a timeout. But you're going to press my backups. Now I'm going to call it. Once you're going to keep playing, I'm going to keep playing. And in that spot, the best thing for me to do as a coach to help my players that are on the court is to call that timeout and reset the 10-second clock. Like, you want to pop off at me? You're the one that caused all this. I was happy to let the game be over. But you want to go 94 feet on my guys? Well, now I'm going to do what's best for my guys. With the benefit of hindsight, sure, it would have saved us all. We'd be talking about Auburn right now if Greg would have just kept it moving.
And we'll get there, yeah.
But when Juwan Howard's going to pop off at me, if I'm Greg Gard in that moment, if he's going to pop off at me, my instincts are to, what? You're going to remember what? You're pressing my backups. Game's already decided. So what did I do? Call a timeout? That's what you're mad about? How about this? Deal? Don't press my backups when the game's already decided. I won't call a timeout that'll aggravate you. You could say Greg Gard should have just kept it moving and not say anything, and I'll agree with you. But is that what most people would do? It's not what I would do.
I just don't like. Gard tried to reframe the situation in the press conference after he had cooled down. That was also just the other thing. But yes, like just the machismo involved in all this, I thought was just a joke. Now I want to loop in Nada real quick here, because we talked briefly before we started this podcast, and he had an interesting point of view. Nada is our producer, if anyone's watching or listening. And listen, this is such a big event. I think we will have people listening to this podcast that maybe haven't listened in a long time or coming to the first time. Nada Edwards produces this podcast. Nada, what is your interpretation of what you saw, or at least your reaction to how this story has played out over the past few hours?
At least to start this, and thank you for looping me in on this, but the first thing I come to, like, Greg Gard is just as, and Norlander, you've been on this, Greg Gard is just as responsible for this as Juwan Howard is. Because after the third time you get told, do not touch me, like that, it's on at that. You have to listen. It's either that. Second thing is, I really want to know what Krabenhoff said.
Right. Because
there are very few things, even in the heat of passion, that will get me to at least mush you, let alone start a fight. So I think we honestly have to figure out what was said there. And then the third one, and I know you disagree with this one, Norlander, a kid, none of the student athletes that threw punches or anything else should be facing a suspension on this. This was mishandled from the adults by the adults from jump. I'm okay with none of the kids receiving their suspensions. Let the coaches take all the hits on this, and let's move forward.
I will say this. Okay. Like on the long list of reasons a head coach can't do something like this is because your players are going to follow you. Like once you throw the first, whatever that was, slap, mush, punch, open-handed, whatever, once you take it there, your 19 and 20-year-olds are taking it there. And now you've got this ugly scene that could have obviously gotten a lot worse than what it was, but what it was undeniably bad. And so that's the other reason you just cannot have a coach go there, because once you take it there, like if one player takes it there, everybody might not be on board with it. But once you see your coach take it there, now it's on. And what you saw in the subsequent moments was evidence of that. I do think not as accurate in the sense that what on earth did Joe say that set Juwan off like that? Because this all started, like, Juwan Howard might not even know who he is.
Right, and I want to be clear that I am not accusing Joe Krabenhoff of saying something completely inappropriate. We just don't know.
I'm not accusing him of saying anything. I have no idea what he said.
I want to know what prompts that kind of response out of Juwan Howard.
That's the thing, because there is nothing Greg Gard did or said that made Juwan Howard want to smack him. But right. Joe Krabenhoff said something that made Juwan Howard want to smack him. And I don't know what that was, but it's got to be. Juwan was mad at this guy. Like, have you ever been in an altercation? Like, you're mad at this guy right in front of you. What does this guy over here got to say to make you turn your attention over there and pop him? I have no idea, but it's got to be. It's got to be something.
I don't know. I highly disagree. The players have to be suspended. If there is players closed fist throwing punches on video, the league will not stand for that. So
yeah, they're going to be suspended.
The adults absolutely made this. They instigated the situation. They made it worse. And once Howard went after Krabenhoff, then it was suddenly on. And like, in Michigan, they're in this, like, they're trying to get into the tournament. The season's been disappointed. These guys are pissed. And then suddenly, like, it is the just brutal concoction of a loss, highly competitive environment. They just kicked your tail. They pulled away at the end. You see your head coach, the guy you talk with, the guy that leads you every day, he suddenly throws a hand, and then you feel like you just want to get out some some frustration. I get it, but they're going to be suspended. I don't know how long, and I don't know which player specifically will get that, but you got to sit players if they throw punches. Like you cannot not do that. It would set a brutal precedent. My biggest question is how much of a punishment will those players get versus Howard? And then I don't anticipate Gard will face a suspension of any kind. But I hear what you're saying. I do hear what you're saying on that, Nada. And there are certain perspectives that, frankly, Parrish and I don't have that we need to be empathetic to and respectful of. So I wanted to give you voice to that as well, because I think that's also an important component of the confrontation and how it played out.
Yeah, I would assume Greg Gard faces no real punishment. Let's define the baseline of punishment at a suspension. I would imagine Greg Gard gets no suspension. The players who threw punches on video, they're going to face a suspension. And Juwan Howard's going to face a suspension. I think it stopped short of termination, although there were plenty of people, even like legitimate media, not just randoms, but people who have real jobs in media saying that he should be terminated for what he did. I'll stop short of that. I don't like
I'm not there. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't like throwing around termination for one bad moment. Although I recognize, like, by definition, one bad moment could lead to life in prison, right? Not as it relates to this, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people in prison who are there for one bad moment, one bad decision. I'll stop short of Juwan Howard should be fired. I'm not going to go there, but does he deserve to be punished in some way? Yes, and I'm assuming he will. And the fact that his athletic director pretty quickly came out with a statement that wasn't really trying to, weave here and weave there. It was like, hey, the statement more or less was, I'm paraphrasing here, but like, whatever led to this. There's no excuse. I got it. There's no excuse for that. I'll let you.
Court manual says there is no excuse for any of our staff or student athletes to get into a physical altercation with others, regardless of instigating factors. I reached out and apologized to Chris McIntosh and President Coleman. They're with Wisconsin. And President Coleman has reached out to the UW Chancellor Blank to apologize for the totally unacceptable behavior. We will review the situation more thoroughly and work with the Big Ten Conference as they determine their disciplinary actions, and we'll determine if any further disciplinary actions are needed. Word manual is, of course, exactly right. Side note, hello to everyone new to the Eye on College Basketball YouTube chat. Where you guys been, man? We got some fun episodes on the regular here, so it's great to see everyone so well behaved too. Wow, this is an amazing thing we've got going on YouTube right now. We all encourage very healthy, friendly, respectful dialogue. Thank you for stopping by. That's about all I got on this, Parrish. I think we'll get something in an official capacity on Monday. Hell, maybe we'll get something late Sunday, but I bet you the Big Ten comes down on this on Monday. Michigan's next game is at home against Rutgers on Wednesday. That's when we'll get all disciplinary action. Oh, by the way, Michigan's next 4 games are all at home.